I will call the 86th annual meeting of the Hanover Hanover Consumer Cooperative Society to order. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. First, I want to mention that there will be time for questions and comments after each segment on our agenda, or the primary segments, which will be the business update from General Manager Paul, co-op finances with our treasurer Peggy, and the proposed bylaw revisions with Kevin. So if you have questions or comments on those segments, the presenter will take them after those segments, and then we will also have time for questions and comments at the very end before we go into the candidates forum. I also want to mention that some accidental language went out in a mailing about voting on the King Award. It was left over from a template from last year. In fact, the co-op has allocated the King Award already, so that voting won't take place by the membership. This year's the co-op chose to donate the King Award to the nonprofit Cooperative Development Fund to support immediate and ongoing needs of Ukrainian cooperators. So our $500 contribution was matched by Frontier Co-op and NCG, and has helped raise, well, it's more now, almost $200,000. And I believe April will be putting a link in the chat for more information on that. All right, so I want to welcome everyone, board members, co-op employees, member owners of the co-op, and guests, and get us into our meeting, starting with the adoption of last year's annual meeting minutes. And just a reminder, anyone who is a member owner can second or vote or discuss in this meeting. This is a meeting of the members, and that includes voting on the minutes. So I will entertain a motion and turn it to Rosemary.
Thank you. Before I make that motion, I'd like to make a correction to the minutes as they went out, in that Marta Chironi was present at the meeting. And now I would like to move to approve those corrected minutes of the meeting, of the annual meeting of 2021.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you. I saw Paul, Terry, and Marta. All in favor, everyone here, if you can raise your hand digitally or on the screen so April can see you in any way.
Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Moving right along, I will turn it over to Oren.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to be introducing our Gerstenberger Scholarship Fund winner. So the Gerstenberger Scholarship Fund offers scholarships to members and employees of cooperatives in the Upper Valley who seek to further the cooperative movement through education, training, and/or business development. The fund is named in honor of the Hanover Consumer Cooperative Society's long-serving general managers, Harry and Arthur Gerstenberger, and first education director, Sally Gerstenberger. Put shortly, Melissa Scanlon is an environmental rock star who fits all these criteria. She is currently the Lynn B. Eline Endowed Chair and Professor in Water Policy and Director of the Center for Water Policy at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Freshwater Sciences. While director and co-founder of the New Economy Law Center at the Vermont Law School, Melissa has done research within Vermont's burgeoning co-op sector. She applied for the Gerstenberger Scholarship to assist her Fulbright senior scholar position in funding her research into successful cooperative models abroad. Her book, Prosperity in the Fossil-Free Economy, provides a legal blueprint for creating businesses which look a lot like ours. Now, you didn't come here to hear me tell you about this. We have the expert right here. So without further ado, Melissa.
Thank you, Oren. I think you're all experts at your annual meeting today, and I appreciate having some time here. I was a member of this co-op, and I think you're always somewhat a member, right? Because my number still worked to register for this meeting, but I didn't vote. But when I lived in the Upper Valley, I frequented it all the time. I moved to Milwaukee to join the faculty at UW Milwaukee. And so now my local co-op is the Outpost. And we just had our elections and annual meeting as well. I want to thank you for the Gerstenberger Scholarship Award. It was something that I used to help pay for some expenses that I had in terms of conducting research in Spain. I had the opportunity to go there from January to June in 2019 as a Fulbright scholar. And what motivated me to go there to study co-ops is that at the time I was at Vermont Law School, I had been the associate dean of the environmental program at Vermont Law School. And from that vantage point, was able to reflect on the fact that environmental law was not really resulting in enough improvements to environmental outcomes, and wasn't really having anything to say about social improvements. And when we look at the world, the major indicators of well-being are all going in the wrong direction. Greenhouse gases are rising. The gap between rich and poor is increasing. We're losing biodiversity. There's a rise in mental and physical health problems, and on and on. So I turned to researching cooperatives to understand how the private sector can do more for the triple bottom line. And I really appreciate that the Hanover Co-op provided me with that scholarship fund to help assist with the research. The areas of the economy that I was looking at were those that are the biggest drivers of greenhouse gas emissions, and so the drivers of climate change: energy, food, trade, water, and finance. So there's no time for a full book talk today, but I'm going to put a link in the chat to a conversation that I had with Gus Speth at the Norwich bookstore. And so you can get a full book talk if you're really interested in that. And of course, I encourage you to check out my book. The chapter on food highlights co-ops that sell food to consumers like yours, and some of the producer and worker co-ops whose products you actually carry, like Organic Valley or Just Coffee. And I think the most interesting part of the food co-op system in Spain, to me, was that they're competing with major retailers. So one of the co-ops I featured is called Consume. It was created at the dawn of building a new democracy and labor movement in Spain in 1975. And by 2019, when I encountered it, Consume had grown to serving 3 million consumer members and had over 14,000 workers at the co-op, 95% of which were worker owners. So they had grown to be the 7th largest retailer in terms of sales in Spain and the largest on the Spanish Mediterranean with over 700 stores. And it was really tremendous to see that a co-op could actually be operating at that level and competing at that level. One of the contrasts with an investor-owned supermarket, even though they were competing at that level, is that instead of having profits go to shareholders, their profits, their surplus went to their consumer and worker owners. So in 2017, when they had an increase of 7% in sales over the prior year, that meant almost 52 million euros were distributed to their members. And then in addition to the financial benefits that they were showing, they have so many non-financial benefits aligned with cooperative principles. So they'd been measuring and reporting on non-financial matters since 2006 and had been the first supermarket chain in Spain to use the carbon footprint about a decade ago. And by 2019, they were already running all of these stores that I just mentioned. 75% of their operations run on renewable energy with a goal of 100% by the end of that year. So if you find that intriguing, you can learn more about it in the book. I found that cooperatives are really the best route to achieve positive results with business activities, but they can be strengthened as well. And the co-op values are an opportunity to check in on how the co-op is doing, right? The US cooperatives, the organizations really sometimes lack a clear vision for environmental sustainability. And so a great starting point is to articulate to members and to society at large the cooperative difference and ground it in Cooperative Principle 7, the concern for the community, which means that cooperatives are working for the sustainable development of their communities through policies approved by their members. So improvement can start with grounding the legal design of your co-op in these values. So looking at your bylaws, and I know you're going to be looking at your bylaws today, thinking about how you reflect that in your publications, your training, your tools for your members to achieve sustainability goals in your day-to-day operations. A model I use in the book is from a product you actually have on your shelves, Real Pickles. They're a cooperative in Massachusetts, and they're a great example of how to effectively integrate the co-op values and principles into their legal documents and draft strong sustainability missions and purpose into those governing documents. So I encourage you to look at that. And by no means am I suggesting that the Hanover Co-op has anything wrong with your legal documents. I have not looked at your bylaws or articles. I'm just saying this is a check-in point, right? The annual meeting is a chance to check in on how well you're reflecting your values. And another piece is whether or not you're doing a non-financial audit of the co-op. I know in 2020, the board of this co-op set a goal to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030. That is fantastic. We're 8 years away from that deadline, right? So how's the co-op doing in switching to environmentally friendly refrigerants, low energy LED lighting, switching out its gas powered fleet to alternative powered vehicles, powering everything on renewables? Does everyone who comes into the store know that this is a goal and where you are in achieving it, so they can participate in this progress and feel good about purchasing things in your store, right? Co-ops give us this opportunity to move off of fossil fuels and meet the sustainable development goals much faster than required by law. But that depends on the members and leaders setting goals and working for them and being really transparent about it. So I'm excited that you have set this goal and excited for you in your annual meeting so you can use this as a check-in point on your goals. I thank you for your time. I can stay for questions if time permits. I don't want to, cut into the rest of your meeting. And I just say keep working for the common good.
All right, thank you very much. I wasn't sure if Oren was going to jump back on, but Thank you so much for
Running the
coming.
meeting, so. But
I'm
thanks for the opportunity.
I'm going to post in the chat the conversation I talked about. That's the longer book talk if anyone wants to look at that later.
Thank you. And if there are any questions or comments, that would be absolutely fine if anyone has any. Marta?
Hey, Melissa.
Hi.
It's great to hear about your work. So thank you so much for sharing this very inspiring nuggets here. The board has been working on revising ends. So the end policy is one place where we can make a difference by involving our broader member base. And so we can talk later about this. We have a survey ongoing for our members around the long-term results that we would like to see for the co-op. And so I wonder whether you have anything to share in your inquiry about the role of ends and setting these larger goals that you were talking about, and how members can actually have a voice in shaping those longer-term goals.
Oh, I think it's critically important to set those longer term goals, Marta, and to bring in the membership and setting them is really important in terms of carrying out the democratic principle of the co-op. So, and without setting goals, you don't really know where you're going. So that's why I really commend the co-op in setting the goal of net zero by such an early date, earlier than a lot of businesses, and engaging the membership in that kind of goal setting is really, really key. One of the examples that I highlight in the book is from a renewable energy co-op in Spain that is national in scope. And as a national co-op, you would think that they wouldn't have a really robust engagement of members in setting goals like you're talking about, Marta, but they combine using technology like surveys with having small local groups meeting and talking and bubbling up, both from that interpersonal interaction on the small level and using technology. Now, you guys are already on a small level, right, in the Upper Valley. So if you can combine interacting personally with technology to reach more people, I think you'll be on really strong footing to setting those goals and getting people on the same page towards why they're paying maybe more sometimes for the product, and reminding people that that is related to a goal that they've set.
Thank you, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't look like there are more questions. At least I don't see hands up. So I'm going to bow out of the meeting. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm happy to be available to you offline as well. So take care.
Thank you for joining us. All right, we will move along to the business update with our general manager, Paul Guidone. And Paul, I will leave it up to you to take questions and comments.
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this lovely Saturday morning. It's always interesting to give a review of the prior year when you're 4 months into the next year, but I'll do my best. I'm also going to make an assumption that since you're all here on the, I was going to say on the phone, but on the TV, that you're obviously very engaged members. And I'll make an assumption that you have read at least one of my weekly blogs that I've sent to you. Therefore, based on that assumption, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about 2021. You can find that in the documents that we've posted online, the operating plan and the ends. I'm just going to highlight some of the key things that transpired last year in the time I have before I get the virtual hook. So we'll just go through it from there. Melissa made reference to triple bottom line, and that's one of the things and the themes that I'm going to talk about this morning. Our co-op is a triple bottom line business, and what we do is informed by that triple bottom line. And what are those triple bottom lines? The first one is a solid foundation, both from an infrastructure and a financial perspective. Without that, we can't support our second and third parts of our bottom line, which is focus on community engagement and the environment. There was, I don't want to go into too much of last year. We know we had issues contending with COVID, never seeming to go away, masks, vaccinations, supply chain challenges, employment issues, and so forth and so on, people leaving the industry and the like. So I think we all know that by now, and we don't have to cover a lot of that information. But what I do want to focus on, and it does pick up where Melissa left off, and the first big accomplishment last year for the co-op was actually the replacement of all of our refrigeration in our Lebanon store. And this was transpiring before the board had come and put out their 2030 plan for net zero emissions, but it dovetails quite nicely into it because it enabled us to take what were if you will, projects and put it into a very comprehensive process. And I'm going to describe that for a few moments. The work that was done in Lebanon was tremendous. A lot of what Melissa had talked about came to pass, and we actually reduced greenhouse gas emissions out of the Lebanon store by 66%, which reduced overall greenhouse gas emissions from the overall co-op by 36%. And that's a good start. We then engaged to meet the board's goal, an organization, VEIC, that specializes in working with grocery stores to become more energy efficient across the board. And our colleagues at VEIC, and I say colleagues because this is a long-term project, have produced a very comprehensive plan that was presented to the board after it went through multiple iterations with the leadership team on the ways to get there. We're talking about not just the usual types of equipment replacement, but changes in overall philosophy on how the business is run from an energy perspective. And that was a good first step. We've now just worked with VEIC to create a contract, a consulting type contract, which basically says, okay, here's where we think the business is going. How do we take your longer term plan and make it a reality? So it's not just about when something begins to break down and replace it, what's the most efficient way of doing it at that point in time? The other thing that Melissa mentioned, which I want to make sure that everyone is aware of, one of the planks of that initiative that we're working with the EIC is a scorecard, because she's absolutely right. You have no idea where you're going unless you can measure it. And you basically get the actions that you measure and therefore reward. So that's very high up on the list of things that we're going to be working on. And actually, Amanda, as my successor as GM, will be taking the leadership team going forward with. So those were two very, very critical elements. Other things that helped shore up the first leg of that stool of triple bottom line. We did some seriously comprehensive reviews of several of our major businesses, our service centers, the community market on Lime Road, and our kitchen and our PFD departments. The service centers, we really honed in on who are the customers, who are the individuals who come to us, breaking them out between everyday customers, kind of the professionals who are using the place as a way station, waiting for work, and fleet service. And how do we interact with each of those particular groups? Community market on Lime Road is a gem that we are starting to round off and polish quite nicely. You'll hear more about it on all of these projects as we continue through 2022. But the focus on Lime Road is going to be, how do we turn that facility into a destination for people to come in and spend some time there? Got the sports fields, potentially new housing. So a combination of food store and eatery, a destination place. There aren't that many in the area that actually can pull off what we can pull off, because it's a way for us to showcase the last part of our major initiatives, which are our PFD and our commissary kitchen. They should be true differentiators for us in the community, and CCM should be a big beneficiary of that. So those are projects that we've been working on and will continue to progress in 2022. Along with that, we've increased our focus. I shouldn't say increased, that's not fair. We rededicated our focus on local products and local vendors, and I'll come to that in a few comments later. The other element that was big for us in 2021 and in 2022 is our focus on our employees. We've always focused on our employees, but we were able to bring our starting wage up to $15 an hour, fully 2 years ahead of schedule. That was huge. We had to do some tough things internally, but we did it because at the end of the day, if there are no employees, there's no store, there's no service center, there's really no co-op for members to shop at or to get their cars fixed at. In addition to which, that was just the first stage. The second stage was we needed to do a comprehensive review of our compensation plans. Why? This pandemic has turned all businesses upside down. There is an absolute critical demand for talent out there, and people are chipping away by increasing wages, and different types of benefits. It was absolutely critical for the co-op to step back and say, right, how do we compensate our employees? Are we at market? Are we paying fair, competitive wages? So our HR team engaged outside experts in the New Hampshire and Vermont markets. We went through a comprehensive review, tons of data. Frankly, it got a little painful after a while going through all of this stuff, as anybody in the leadership team would recognize. But at the end of the day, this past Thursday, we've announced our new compensation plan, which we will begin to roll out to all employees starting the first pay period of July. So that was a big step for making sure that another big, important element of what the co-op is all about is on solid footing. I could go on with other internally focused items. As I say, I've written about them for the past 2 years. They're in the operating plan that you'll see. But those factors set up the solid foundation, both from an infrastructure perspective and from a financial perspective, that enables us to do the next two areas of a triple bottom line business. And those are community engagement and the environment. And let me just highlight some things. I'm going to pull up some data up on my screen. Again, you'll see this in the documents that have been posted in both the operating plan and what I'm now speaking from are our ends document. With the pandemic, we had to make lots of changes. We scaled back our classes, all types of interaction on a lot of levels with members. But last year, things started to become more normal, whatever normal means any longer. And we started to see an influx in the demand for classes at the CLC, so much so that we had over 1,000 individuals participate in over almost 150 different programs. That was a big change from the prior year. Our paper shred events and our food drive, over 308 individuals participated. We've recycled 14,000 pounds of paper and provided almost 1,100 meals donated to the community at large. Willing Hands, obviously our very big and very long-term strong partner. We donated 136,000 pounds of food to Willing Hands last year. That's very impressive. Pennies for Change, contributions from you, the members, critically important. Went to 27 different organizations north of $150,000. And Car Connects, 109 vouchers, 90 households, over 200 people, $11,000 donated. That's impressive by any measure. The other elements I'd like to talk about, I mentioned earlier, are recommitment and refocus and deepening focus on what ultimately amounts to ends 1 and 3 at the end of the day, which both basically get to the point that the co-op, that members are looking for products, services, when they want them, when they need them, in the form that they want them, and that we're providing enough choice. I can tell you that the number of products that we offer are over 40,000, 28,000 unique items called SKUs, shopkeeping units. Many, many different categories. There isn't a department that realistically that has fewer than, close to the major ones have well over 100 brands and categories and subcategories to themselves. We've brought on many more new local producers this year, and in some areas and some types of, especially certain types of goods, ranging from anywhere from 20 to 500 local producers in those categories. So we've made significant strides with items 2 and 3 of our triple bottom line. So when you put them all together, the solid infrastructure and financial base, the focus on community engagement, and the environment, none of this would have been possible if it weren't for 3 critically important groups. First and foremost, the board. Thank you for your support. Member owners, clearly, thank you for shopping at the co-op and for being a member and for caring and being engaged. I'm going to take a little poetic license here since we're in voting mode, and take a little poetic license with a kind of an old statement that had to do with voting in a Midwestern city. But as it applies to the co-op, I would say that as members think about shopping at the co-op, shop early, shop often. And the third grouping of people who are very important for us, without a doubt, without hesitation or reservation, are our employees. They're awesome. They were whipped from pillar to post over the last 2 years with COVID, and they handled every situation that was thrown at them with grace, dignity, and professionalism. It's an awesome grouping of people that we have at the co-op, and I have no doubt that that will continue in the future. So I will stop there, say thank you all for your support, and I will answer any questions, or I will turn it over to Peggy. Eric?
Just clapping.
Oh, sorry. I'm not used to that. My bad. Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Really, really appreciate it. That's a great segue into the financial report. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Peggy O'Neill, Treasurer of the Co-op Board. The financial report that Mark Langlaw, Director of Finance, will present in just a moment for our 2021 year contains important financial information for us as co-op members. And I want to ask, as you listen to Mark's presentation, I encourage you to think about what creates the numbers, $87 million nearly, that Mark is now presenting. Nearly every day throughout the year, I and you as co-op members and shoppers know we can walk into any one of the co-op stores and into the service stations. Before the doors open for us as shoppers, co-op employees are getting the stores ready for us, preparing for the inevitable busy day ahead. I often shop at the Lebanon store, and when I walk through the doors, I'm greeted by buckets of beautiful flowers and discounted specials, and the service desk is right there on the right for anyone who has a question or needs some assistance. I walk past, almost always walk past, the tempting chocolate section. I know I can get a cup of coffee, a scone. I love the scones. I look at the prepared foods. I really like the mushroom and leek chicken pot pie. I sing King Arthur Bakery and Red Hen Bakery breads. They're beautifully displayed, and I decide what kind of delicious loaf I want. During the holidays, I remember there was a display of beautiful, locally made biscotti, and the deli counter is always busy. As I continue to shop, I know I can get local eggs, local dairy products, any number of local items. as well as pick up regular grocery items, mayonnaise, chicken stock, what have you. The fish and seafood counter is amazing. Beautiful, fresh fish and seafood in the case and helpful staff behind it. Same for the butcher shop. The produce, cheese, and coffee sections offer such variety, and they're so beautifully displayed. And then when I get in line and wait to check out, I see the cashiers and people helping to bag, being friendly, easygoing, and efficient. And I'm just one of thousands of shoppers they will serve day in and day out. Then the store closes. And before it opens the next morning, I'm guessing magic happens. Receipts are reconciled, inventory is checked and adjusted, shelves are restocked, stores are cleaned, et cetera, and our co-op stores are ready for us the next day. Yes, it's a business, but it's our very special cooperative. The amazing employees of the co-op make it all work for us as shoppers. So as you listen to Mark present the financial reports, perhaps consider what goes on day in and day out, nearly every day of the year, in order for us to shop. The daily attention, care, and focus required by our co-op employees for us to receive these financial reports at our annual meeting. I'm appreciative and thankful for our co-op employees. You do a lot. Some of it we see, much of it we don't. Thank you, Paul, for your leadership during unprecedented difficult times. And thank you to Mark, Amy Barton, and everyone in finance for taking all the day-to-day activity and transforming it in today's financial reports. You make it look easy. I also just want to say that Jeff Wheeler from our auditors, Baker, Newman and Noyes is here with us today. They expressed an unmodified opinion to our financial statements, and Mark can tell you more about that. So with further ado, I turn things over to Mark. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Peggy, for your kind comments. This year during the audit, as Peggy mentioned, the Baker Newman Noyes presented us with an unmodified audit report, which means that our financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, the financial position of the cooperative as of the end of the year. That's exactly what you want to see every year, this type of audit report. That says that the numbers that have been distributed are accurate, are materially accurate for the business, so so members can know exactly what's going on. We move on to slide number 2. We see the comparison of 2020 to 2021's data. 2021 is in the, I guess, teal colored columns. And we see that for 2021, our sales dropped a little bit in about $300,000, $200,000 in gross sales from 2020. And a lot of that has to do with, went down because of COVID. There was a massive stocking of people's pantries in the early part of 2020, which we see a much evener sales numbers through 2021. Again, inflation is also starting to impact our gross sales numbers. Sales discounts. Last year, we gave almost a little over $2 million, or 2.3% of our gross sales number back as sales discounts to employees as well as membership. This year, it was 2.59%, or $2.2 million. So that's a lot of money that's going back to the membership. And they, as part of their, in essence, patrons refund they're getting as they buy their groceries each year, each time they purchase for the 10% discount. That gives us down to a net sales number of about 85 million last year and about 85 million this year. So we're kind of in the same ballpark. We're still off by that $300,000 to $400,000 number. Cost of goods sold, it's around 57 million this year and 57 million last year. It represents about 65.25% last year and 65.5% this year of actual gross sales. So that means our gross profit margin is down slightly, about 50 basis points this year from 2020. Wages and benefits is also down slightly this year. And a lot of that has to do because we did a lot of bonuses in 2020 And we've also had situations of getting number of staff into the stores. So we were trying to hire employees, but we can't get them. So we're not expending that money on payroll as for directly. Other operations is down again a little bit, about $400,000 expenses. So that's all going in the good direction. Income from operations last year was a minus $75,000, and this year we have a positive 461. So it's a big swing there, about almost a little over $500,000. Board expenses are about even from one year to the prior year, as well as other expenses, which include interest we pay on our long-term debt. Earnings before patrons refund was a loss of $301,000, and this year it's a positive of $238,000. But you see there's a notation in the column that says there's no patrons refund this year. Based on a review of the calculating the patrons refund and seeing where people would be with actual patrons refund numbers, and looking at the tax number, which is actually down page a bit, we determined, or we suggested to the board that we would do no patrons refund this year and retain that money to help pay down our debt as we move forward and be ready to sink our debt as much as we can in 2020, in 2030, when we have to pay off our loans. Other income, you see it's significantly down this year from last year. It's up at $2.2 million last year because of the money we received for the grant from the SBA that we've from the PPP loan. Again, earnings before taxes is down almost $2 million last year because of the PPP, and $254,000 this year. Then we see the provision for income taxes. Last year was $65,000, which is an expense. And you say, well, why is it $65,000, but our income was $1.9 million last year? Shouldn't it be higher than this year? And the reason being the $2.2 million that we received from the SBA was not taxed. It's not subject to taxes. So we get a benefit there. This year, so why is it $217,000 this year versus $254,000? When we put in the new equipment in Lebanon, there's a significant depreciation adjustment between book and tax. It's two sets of books. Under book, we depreciate those assets in a certain life, and tax is a different method. So it's what they call book tax difference. So that resulted in us having to have more expense in the current year than we would have otherwise. So we record that expense in the current year, gives us a $36,000 profit, so to speak. If it had been a loss, it would have been in brackets. So that $36,000, if we actually gave our patrons refund, would have made us be in a negative position, which have eaten into our retained earnings further. That's a position you really don't want to get into. Next screen is a graphic presentation of the sales, the gross margin, direct wages and benefits over the prior 5 years. And as we see, sales went up quite a bit in 2020 and went down slightly in 2021. Again, that's all net sales numbers. But we're still about $85 million in sales. Then if we look at our gross margin, kind of retained somewhat steady. There's a little bit of a bump up last year. Now it's gone down slightly. So overall, it's kind of got a little bit of a up and the down. We're starting to go on a downward sign. We're going to continue to work on improving that number. Direct wages and benefits have remained somewhat steady across the chart. And G&A expenses have remained pretty much steady throughout that chart. Another thing to understand is in 2021, about 76% of our sales were to members versus 24% to non-members. Now we look at our balance sheet comparison for 2020 versus 2021. In the first line, you see a big decrease of about $2.5 million. So the first thing comes to mind, so what happened? Where did our money go? Well, our money ended up going in property, plant, and equipment, a portion of it, because we see that went from 7.8 up to 9.8. So it's $2 million sitting in there for capital improvements, a majority of which was done to the Lebanon store for new equipment. Well, that's only accounts for about $2 million of this decrease. Where did the other 500,000 approximately go to? If we continue down the page, we see current portion of long-term or current maturities of debt was almost $600,000 last year. It's $200,000 this year. And our long-term debt was $6 million last year, and now it's $5.5 million. So we actually paid down about a little over $800,000 in debt this year, which included paying off the balance of our PPP loan with the SBA, and we closed out that liability. So overall, our total assets is of 19.5 million versus about 19.5 million in the current year. So our asset base is staying somewhat consistent. If we look down at the total liabilities, it's 10.8 last year versus 10.4. Again, there's our $400,000+ that we paid down in long-term debt, and the members' equity is increasing from 8.7 to $9 million, all going in the right direction. Then we have a chart here on basket sizes, and we can see the basket sizes for 2017 through 2021 and how they kind of spiked in 2020 due to the COVID buying of products in the early part of the year. And they haven't really gone down a lot. They haven't returned to the 2019 levels at this point. They've crept down some, but not to the same level. And if we look down at customer accounts, we see customer accounts nosedived in 2020 as everybody was buying bigger loads of product and not going so often to the stores. But we're seeing that to start to tick back up in 2021. Pennies for Change. This is something that's a program that we started back in 2016. And as we see, we have gained ground from 2016 to 2021 of well over $1 million donated through the Pennies for Change program. The question came up the other day. So how many of our transactions are converting into Pennies for Change transactions or donations? In 2021, we had 300,000 plus transactions, which represented 25% or 25.25% of our total transactions generated donations to Pennies for Change. In 2020, it was approximately 364 with a 25.28% of those transactions. So the transaction percentage conversion is not changing that much. Then below we see where our food access partners, how much they got this year was around almost $31,000 went to Listen, Upper Valley Haven, and Willing Hands to help with the food access. And then below we've spent another $61,000 went to some of these various organizations. I just picked some of the bigger ones like Mascoma Foundation, Volunteers in Action, Headrest, all got some portion of that $61,000. So that includes our report on the finances for the co-op. I would open it up for questions at this point. I don't see any questions. Oh, Paul?
Nothing like getting a question from the GM, huh?
Yeah.
Mark, you mentioned all the work, and you both mentioned all the work done at Lebanon and the expense that's been associated with it. It might be helpful if you could give the members in attendance and for the record the impact depreciation has. You know, it's a non-cash expense, so forth and so on. So the ability to generate cash, not generate cash from operations.
Okay. So depreciation is, to start with, is the ability to expense a fixed asset over its useful life. And the Lebanon store items that we purchased have approximately, we consider a 7-year life for book purposes for the coolers, because it's based on turnover in the store, how often we would have to replace this equipment when it starts to fail. So we depreciate that over 7 years using a straight line method. So it basically takes the cost of the coolers divided by 7 years, and each year, that's how much depreciation we would have per product. Again, that is a non-cash expense. So it's money going out to recoup the money we invested. When we expensed, we spent the money several years beforehand. So we're just recouping our money. So each year we have about $1 million in depreciation that comes through the co-op as an expense. Some years it's looking at projecting out to 1.3 next year for depreciation expense. That is a non-cash item, so it's not actually an expense that's coming out of our checkbook, but it is an expense that's showing up on our profit and loss statement. So as we look at our business and we look at earnings before taxes, which is we look at the business operations, money we actually expensed, and then we start pulling back items that are non-tax, non-cash items rather, which are like depreciation. So if we made $1 million last year, we would have $1 million more in actual cash that was generated because of the depreciation. That's in that, baked into that number. So I hope that answers your question, Paul.
It does. Thank you, Mark.
Not seeing any other questions. I guess I'm gonna go back to Nick.
All right. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Peggy. We will keep moving on to the proposed bylaw revisions, and I will turn it over to Kevin to lead that.
Thanks, Nick. So as Nick said, we're going to look at our proposed bylaw revisions right now. And more specifically, we're going to take any questions and answers you may have. So as Melissa pointed out, this is a bylaw vote is where the members get to, besides voting for the board of directors, have input on what their business is and what their business does. So the board doesn't do this lightly. We only suggest bylaw changes every so many years. This particular set of revisions did take a couple of years, at least, of time. I think probably closer to 3 years of time. So the board stands behind these proposed revisions, and we encourage your vote. And at this moment, we welcome your questions. So go ahead. If you have any, please raise a hand digitally or on camera. We'll do our best to make note of who has a question. I'm not seeing much. I'll just simply point out that we have broken out the voting into by article. So some of the ballot items do cover multiple revisions, and the final one covers what we call our housekeeping revisions. So that's simple grammar and punctuation, capitalization kind of changes, while the other 4 items are different changes. All right, this might be where we catch up with the agenda. So I'll turn it back to Nick if there are no questions.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. We are getting close to wrapping up, but before we get into general questions and comments, I want to take a moment first to thank 3 outgoing board members, Rosemary Fifield, Kevin Birdsey, and Emmanuel Adjavan, who I do not think can join us today. They have contributed more than I can mention, so I won't try. But their presence will be missed on the board, and we look forward to seeing them around the stores, and especially Kevin, who works in the Hanover location. So thank you to those 3. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Paul Guidone, who is retiring at the end of this month as general manager. Paul started at the co-op as chief financial officer in 2016 and later served as strategic advisor to former general manager Ed Fox. Paul began as interim general manager and then general manager at the start of the global COVID-19 pandemic. His strong, innovative leadership has guided the co-op through some enormous challenges over the past 2 years, and at all times, he has endeavored to put employees first, to keep shoppers safe, and to ensure dependable community access to the goods and services it needs. Under his management, the co-op has enjoyed financial stability even as it has renovated the Lebanon store, increased wages, and worked towards exciting new energy goals. In all, he is leaving the co-op better than he found it and on solid footing, and setting the stage for the success of our next general manager. So I think on behalf of the whole board, and I think the whole membership, thank you to Paul, and we are grateful for everything you did during a very challenging 2 years. And then a quick
Thank you very
note.
much.
Thank you. A quick note about our incoming general manager, Amanda Charlin. She started at the co-op in 2012 as sustainability coordinator and will be taking over as general manager on April 30th at the end of this month. And we will be looking forward to hearing more from her when she steps into that role. Very excited. So general questions and comments from the members before we head into the candidates forum.
Did you folks see there was one bylaw question about voting in the chat?
That's a great question. I think the main reason, as I understand it, is there would be well over 100 ballot items, and if we were doing it item by item, so we had to group it some way. By article seemed like the most natural way to do it. And
All right. Do we have any more general questions or comments? Peter.
Hi, good morning. Just wondering if maybe for Paul or Mark for the coming year, the discussion on, we're seeing grocery prices go up, and where we kind of, is there a projection of where we're expecting to see our top line sales versus cost of product this year? Are we going to be able to pass on those costs? Is the co-op going to be absorbing some of those costs from manufacturers as those prices go up, or kind of wondering what the difference is going to be looking like for the coming year?
Sure, Mark, I'll start off and then let you get into some of the other details.
Okay.
Peter, all through the pandemic, I made it pretty clear to our merchandising team that when we started to get runaway inflation and costs, we weren't going to pass on the costs penny for penny or margin for margin. So we have been eating margin. You'll notice in Mark's chart where I think we went from 33% one year down to 31%. That reflects that decision to eat margin and not pass on 100% of increase in costs. When we did our budget for this year, I think looking out 12 months, there is an assumption for inflation, actually our 5-year forecast. There's an assumption for inflation going out over a period of time. And it impacts all of the expenses, not just sales, cost of goods, everything, wages all the way right on through the P&L. And the forecasts that we use, there are a variety of forecasts. I think in one board meeting that you weren't there, at one of the major factors that we look at is in essence the implied inflation rate through real treasury yields. So looking at nominal yields, looking at tips, treasury inflation protected securities, taking the differential. And you see what we have right now, which is a spike, 6, 7, 8%. And then it starts to round out and roll over. 5 years out, it's about 3.5%. And 10 years out, it's down to about just under 3%, round numbers. So that's kind of the path that we're following. And we factor that in with all of our forecasts. Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, it's just basically what you have said also. We did have a 2.8% inflation factor in our budgets for, we pushed that out for 5 years. And right now we're looking at forecasted food inflation is going to be around they say around 2% for 2023 and 2.10 in 2014. I guess that still remains to be seen, and that number does change every month. So we're just going to have to keep our eyes on this as we move forward. That's it, Paul.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Peter.
All right. And as always, questions or comments can be emailed to the board or to Paul, who is always very responsive, or Amanda in the future. So feel free to reach out if there are questions or comments throughout the year. That concludes our business portion of the meeting, and I will turn it over to CJ for our candidates forum.
All right, thank you so much. Nick, thank you for turning it over. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank the member owners for being here this morning and to meet the candidates. Candidates, I see you out there. I'm excited for everyone to get to know you. Before we get to introductions, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kenesha Jackson, but I go by CJ. I'll tell you, boy, does time fly. Just a year ago, I too was in the candidate seat, so I can totally relate. So just a little background about myself so you all can get to know me. I remember visiting the co-op for the first time after moving to Vermont. I felt like I had discovered this magical place and knew that I had found a home, kind of like what Peggy was talking about. So it was just so magical. In fact, it is one of my favorite places to take family and friends when they come and visit me. And I told anyone and everyone that I could think of at home about the co-op, and I still brag about it today because we're just a great organization. I didn't know how I was going to get involved in the co-op, but I knew that I wanted to be a part of the co-op. I wanted to be a part of that magic that is the co-op. Time went by and I was approached by a fellow director about joining the board who kind of knew a little bit about my background. And so they asked if I wanted to run, and I accepted, and thus began the journey. And here I am today, serving as the chairperson of the election committee, amongst the other committees, which are the governance and the bylaw committees. And I am just super excited about the future of the board, the direction that we're going in. We have some of the Upper Valley finest with us today. And just enough about me, but yeah, let's get to the candidates because they are truly the rock stars of the show. I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing the candidates to you, and you will get a chance to hear more about their backgrounds. So again, like I said, they are the rock stars, and so I'm going to turn it over. Let's see, who do we have first? Mary Lou, if you don't mind introducing yourself and telling everyone about who you are.
Thank you so much, CJ, and thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a recent resident here in the Upper Valley in comparison to most of you. I am now celebrating, actually yesterday, I was celebrating my 5th anniversary working at the Hopkins Center for the Arts. My family and I moved here from New Haven, Connecticut, where my husband and I were founding members of the Elm City Co-op, which was a hoped for cooperative that lasted 3 years in New Haven, and unfortunately was not able to find the kind of financial sustainability that this wonderful co-op has been able to find to serve for so long. When we came here, we felt like anybody who enters a new community, little unsettled, little unknowing, but it was the food co-op, it was the co-op that really helped us to feel at home, because not only were you able to create beautiful ways of entering the stores, just like Peggy said, I was very moved by your comments, but the way in which the co-op is structured with the triple bottom line, with the way of having community invest not only in the co-op itself and its goals, but how that translates to impact in the community and beyond. We saw today with the gift to the co-ops in Ukraine. So as I think about community service beyond my daily life, I feel like an investment in the co-op is an investment in the broader community and a way in which to serve and build community, because in fact, a co-op and a place like it is really the intersection of sciences, humanities, coming together to really strengthen society. And frankly, that's why I've spent 3 decades in the arts, because I really believe that science and humanities can come together and make stronger communities. That said, the other thing more specifically, beside my passion for the idea of cooperative life, and especially as it relates to food co-ops, I started my career as a finance person. I actually was an auditor, so great definition of depreciation, Mark. Thank you very much. It's a concept that eludes many of us. So I was an auditor. I have a financial background, so I feel like the structural strength of this entity and the data-driven decision-making is really a wonderful attribute, and will contribute well beyond our own existences, I'm sure, to this institution. And community engagement is my passion, because I do believe that the values of this community are expressed by the values of the co-op. And as we welcome new people into the co-op and new people into the community, to be able to express our values through our actions is a very laudable way to welcome people to a community. So I'm going to stop there and just say thank you. And should I have an opportunity to serve, I'll look forward to spending more time with each of you. And if not in the boardroom, certainly in the produce section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lou. So we'll get to questions after each candidate speaks. And so hold your questions for now. But thank you so much, Mary Lou. Let's see, up next, let's see, Jessica.
Thank you, CJ. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here and participating in your co-op. I'm Jessica Giordani, and I've served on the board of directors for the co-op since 2018. I moved to Lebanon, New Hampshire with my family in 2016, also from Connecticut, like Mary Lou, and am also involved in the arts in the community here. I own a small business in Lebanon. I own Scratch Supply Company, which is a yarn shop, and I'm going to take a second to brag about our community involvement a little bit. We recently achieved our B Corporation certification. So the work that I do every day in my business is connected to better serving our community and holding environmental standards and sustainability at the core of all of the decisions that we make about our business. You might also be familiar with me from the Lebanon Farmers Market. I've been the city's market coordinator since 2017, and that's how I became involved with the co-op. We've been members since we moved to this community, but I've been deeply involved in market culture for the last 11 years now, both as a specialty food producer in my past career and as a manager and organizer of local farmers markets. So my affection for local agriculture and supporting the economy and the environmental importance of local food is something that is near and dear to my heart. And that's how I was recruited to the board in my capacity as the city's market manager. I also chair the Arts and Culture Commission for the City of Lebanon, and I'm the Ward 3 elections moderator. So my face is out and about in the community, kind of everywhere. So I see and get the opportunity to know lots of you. In my time serving on the board, I have seen tremendous changes happen at the co-op. The board has evolved. The stores have worked tirelessly before and through the pandemic to create the best environment possible for this community. And I think that our commitment to forward motion and growth in kind of all aspects of what we do as a co-op is really a shining star in the Upper Valley. My role on the board as the chair of the Member Linkage Committee has been an evolution as well. Member linkage is something that the board has been kind of working to define and accelerate for maybe over a decade, beyond my tenure with the board. And in the past 2 years, I think we've really kind of knuckled down and focused on educating ourselves and training and developing real awareness about the crucial value of member linkage work for the board and in turn for the entire organization. And we're in the process of finalizing our 3-year member linkage plan and really making progress and moving forward as a board. So I am enthusiastic about the opportunity to be voted back onto the board so that I can continue my work with the committee and the board as a whole, and really expand our reach into the community and connect with the membership to really have all of you participate in helping us guide our vision as an organization. Thank you so much, and I will pass things along to the next person.
Thank you, Jessica. We're so excited to have you running again. And then also congratulations on achieving B Corp status. So let's move along. Let's see, Eric, you're up next.
Thank you so much. My name is Eric DeLuca. I live in Wilmot, New Hampshire with my wife, who's a poet and a creative writing professor at Colby Sawyer College in New London. I've also been a big part of supporting the local food system in Vermont, serving on a funding board that has helped put over $10 million into the food economy to support farmers and food businesses there. In the co-op world, I've played leadership roles locally, regionally, and nationally. I served on the board of a food co-op in Western Massachusetts, and actually they were in the process of redoing their ends policies, and I designed a way to use the in-person annual meeting as an opportunity to get direct input from the members that fed into the process. And I'm really excited about the survey that Marta and the team has been putting out now to engage in a similar process now. I think it's a great opportunity to engage all the member owners in what the co-op sees as their needs and what's important for the co-op to achieve. I helped to guide the development of a regional network of food co-ops, the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, which today has over more than 40 food co-ops and startups in it, and is responsible for almost 2,500 jobs. Based on that, I ended up managing the UN declared 2012 the International Year of Cooperatives, and I managed that for the whole country. And that gave me a great opportunity to see all the different ways that co-ops impact people's lives and the intersection between credit unions and rural electric cooperatives. We get our electricity here from a rural electric cooperative in New Hampshire. And also to see how passionate young people were about the values that co-ops represent. And so, you know, one of the things that really struck me in Melissa's comments earlier was the opportunity for co-ops to express concern for community in a way that reflects the co-op values. And I just think it's a great opportunity for this co-op to continue to make sure the member owners have an opportunity to see the progress towards the net zero by 2030 goal and understand how that relates to their values. And then just to recognize that almost $2.25 million went back to the members over the last year based on their economic participation in the co-op. And that's really close to the essence of what co-ops are about. And so those are the kind of things that I'm excited to help with the co-op members seeing their role in the success of the co-op and how the co-op meets their needs, and supporting the co-op members' voice in defining the goals of the co-op moving into the future.
Awesome, Eric. Thank you so much for even highlighting some of the great points about the co-op. Appreciate that. So next we'll have Marlena. Introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you, CJ. So I'm Marlena Furness, and my family and I have lived here in the Upper Valley on and off for about 15 years. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last several years. We were fortunate to move back to the area at the start of the pandemic and have relied on the co-op, you know, like everyone else, for both community and for our food throughout the pandemic. During that time, I discovered I'm also a completely failed backyard gardener. And I attempted to have chickens, and that was somewhat more successful. But I will be purchasing all of my food going forward at the co-op because it turns out I'm not cut out for those things. In addition, I'm a student at the Vermont Law School right now, and I'm going to school for the Master's in Environmental Law with a focus on food and agriculture. So I was born in Vermont and have lived here for pretty much my whole life, with the exception of a few years in Western Massachusetts. And I love this state, and I'm passionate about the agriculture that we produce in this area. And I'm excited to work with the co-op with those things, as well as the environmental goals that the co-op has laid out. I'm very excited to hear about the net zero goal and about the reduction in greenhouse gases that they had last year. So I guess that's me in a nutshell. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marlena. Kudos to you for even trying to, with chickens and all. I'm not that type of person, so I go to the co-op. As
will I from now on. Yes. As it turns out, I do not have a green thumb.
Kudos to you for trying.
Thanks.
Okay, so up next, Karen.
Thank you, CJ, and everybody else. It's nice to see everyone today. I too am from Connecticut, moved here about 3 years ago. Jessica and Mary Lou, I was in Woodbridge, Connecticut, so neighboring town of New Haven. So I understand your struggles for sure. Love living here. This is our second time in New Hampshire. We lived in Amherst, New Hampshire for about 10 years, about 15 years ago. And that was probably my first board type stint where I was on the Amherst PTA, vice president, president, and then advisor. I have a diverse background. In other words, my first career was in retail leadership. So I had the responsibility for 20 stores across 3 different states, New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And so I'm pretty astute at reading P&Ls and understanding financial statements and things like that. And I think it also, having been in retail, gives me empathy. I understand the struggles of being a leader, the recruiting, the hiring, the training, the onboarding, the retaining, especially in this environment has been really difficult. And so I think that empathy is really important, and I definitely have that. In my statement too, I quoted Steve Jobs, and I feel like, you know, I understand we're not here to tell management what to do. We're here to support them and support their decisions and provide some guidance. But Steve Jobs, you know, he said that, you know, we don't hire people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so that they can tell us what to do. And just in listening to the current GM, and I'm really excited about the new GM, I can tell that we definitely hire some really smart people. So currently, I was in retail management and leadership. I transitioned to human resources a couple of decades ago, dating myself, but probably I've been in HR for about 20 years. I think that, and I hope that my skill set around retail and also human resources will be a nice fit for the board. I hope that it can be utilized to its full advantage. I love the co-op. I know everybody says that, but I just totally love the co-op. My first introduction to the co-op was the baby co-op, the little one. My husband and I were section hiking the Appalachian Trail, and we went through, we were hungry, just, you know, was a nice respite for us. And I love the mission. I think that supporting local farmers and other craftspeople is really important. And I believe in the mission. And I am also, I think I heard a couple other people mention, excited about the zero by 2030. And I would love to be part of that. And I would really appreciate being part of the board. And I thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I don't know, I told you we have Upper Valley's finest here. So I appreciate your enthusiasm and excitement as a candidate. So next we have Lindsay. You're up next.
Thank you, CJ. And thank you everyone who has taken the time to be here today. I'm really honored. I'm excited to be running for the co-op board. I am just really quickly about myself. Well, my family moved to the area, to the Upper Valley in 1998. So to open a bed and breakfast in Enfield, New Hampshire. So this became the place where I came home to. And every trip home meant a trip to the co-op. So, and it just was a fantastic place to go. So wherever I lived all over the country, it was just a really unique store and really made me comfortable that my folks were, why they chose this area. I relocated here full-time 8 years ago, yesterday, actually. And just recently realized, like, I'm here for the long term. So I currently am an employee for the co-op. I run the culinary cooking class program. So that awesome stat that Paul introduced, the social outreach, I taught every single one of those classes and every single one of those people. I'm currently our only instructor. So it's been a long couple of years in the changes in classes, but we're looking forward to rebuilding to in-person classes. Well, we've been doing in-person classes, but getting our numbers back up. So, because 1,000's way down from where I was 2 years ago. Anyways, my background and journey, I have been a professional facilitator for over 20 years, and I'm an educator in unconventional spaces. So I've taught, I was a teacher in the Peace Corps, Benin, West Africa. I have done a lot of experiential education, outdoor adventure education, working with populations of special needs, and all in sort of unconventional ways. After I returned from the Peace Corps, I went to do my graduate studies at Penn State University, where I got a master's in rural sociology. And my focus was qualitative research. And I focused in on sustainable agriculture and women farmers specifically. In there, that led me to North Carolina, where I started running farmers markets. I ran the Chapel Hill Farmers Markets for 5 years. I worked with multiple local sustainable agricultural organizations. I also lived on a farm and discovered that I would much prefer to buy my produce than farm my produce. So I'm right there with you, for those that feel that way. And then I ended up relocating back up here, like I said, 8 years ago. Once in Enfield, I have dived into really working towards being a part of this community. So I continued to work in farmers markets. I ran the Enfield farmers markets and I ran the Lebanon farmers markets before Jessica took over. Once I got my job at the co-op, I've worked for the Enfield Shaker Museum, running their gardens and other programs. And currently I am Enfield's town moderator. So I've got town meeting coming up again. 2020 was a fun year to moderate a lot of navigate elections and keeping people safe with all of those challenges. I also am co-chair of our master plan task force in Enfield. We are rewriting our master plan, which is 25 years old. So basically we're starting from scratch. So I am a co-chair of that committee. And this has all led me to realize that I'm pretty embedded in what's happening here. In 2020, I got a certificate of completion from Cornell University in diversity and inclusion. And this is a path in my life that I've been really digging into. And I have a vested interest in this and how it pertains to the co-op, and really looking at that one leg of the triple bottom line, our people leg. So our community, which includes member owners. I'm a member owner. I'm also an employee. So there's a lot of intersection there. And how we also move into the future. We've all watched a lot of organizations and long-time established businesses that, haven't made it. And I think the co-op is now 85 years old, something like that. And I'd like to see it around for another 85 years. So I think one of the biggest challenges that's facing us is thinking about the next generation of co-op shoppers, the next generation of co-op employees, and also where we lie in all of that. And some of that pertains to our values. So I'm really interested in learning policy governance. I think that's a really interesting way to approach the co-op, or just learning how we build that structure and making a difference as I can. I think that's it.
That was excellent, Lindsay. And I just want to applaud Lindsay because she is an employee for the co-op, and we definitely appreciate the employees. We're losing Kevin, and we'll miss him greatly, but we just want to say thank you for all the work that you do and just kind of being there on the front lines to serve us every day. So thank you. All right, so I don't think, well, we have one more person actually. I'll let April, she couldn't be here today.
We've got Peter who is here. Peter.
Oh, Peter, there's Peter. Yeah, sorry, Peter.
Thanks, CJ. Appreciate the time here. So first, I'll give a shout out to Mary Lou and Karen from Connecticut. Go UConn women for the Huskies, go into the final game for the NCAA for, I don't know how many times I've been there, but I also grew up in Connecticut myself. So made me think that actually something I wasn't going to mention, but my ties actually have been to food for back when I was in Connecticut. When I was a kid, I had a farm stand back in Connecticut, and I ran that for many years through high school and through college. I went to the University of Vermont, ran that farm stand down there. And then my parents retired and they took over the business, and then my first sister took it over, and my second sister, and it ended up being a business that survived for 30 plus years down in Connecticut. So I've always been tied to farming and gardening. So Marlena, I'd be happy to help your brown thumb turn into a green thumb if you need any help there. So, and actually up here in Hanover, I've been in Hanover for 16 years. 2 years ago, my partner, Heidi Reynolds, who's active in the community with Ava and Northern Stage and different activities. She always prompts me to get more involved in the community as well, which is great. But she and I started farming property on Route 10 called Montview Farm with the pandemic that last 2 years. So we haven't sold anything, but we've taken all our crops for the last 2 years and donated them to Willing Hands and to the Haven. So I think over the last 2 years, we've donated several thousand pounds of produce to those organizations, which has been kind of fun to help out. So we kind of created our own, or I guess not little, but 2-acre victory garden there. So that's been fun. So get back on track here. I moved to the area 16 years ago. I came up with and started working for King Arthur Flour. I headed up King Arthur Flour's sales there for 10 years. The reason that brought me to the area, I had been in the food business and consumer products food business for 30 years. And I got to the point, I had a young family. We were looking for a nice place to settle down. And I was also looking for a company that meant more than just bottom line profits. So I started searching companies. I started searching companies like Seventh Generation, and at the time Thompson Maine, before they had gotten bought, and King Arthur Flour. And that's what brought me to King Arthur Flour, is just because, as I think everybody probably is aware, they are another business that's a B Corp and very much into the community as well. So I joined King Arthur Flour, headed up their sales for 10 years, and that's gave me the opportunity to really travel around the country and see other food organizations and co-ops. I left King Arthur Flour in 2015 to start my own consulting business in food, and I help small food companies now kind of figure out and launch their items, kind of take them through the steps of what they might need to do and look at a product to be able to make it ready for launch. And that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years. And what I've loved is when I've traveled around the country, my family thinks I'm a little crazy because I tend to, whenever we go on vacation, I go to grocery stores and I go to natural food stores and co-ops and visit them. And my kids know that when we go on vacation, we're going into a bunch of stores as part of our vacation. So it's just something I like to do, and I like to see what's out there. So had the benefit of, with work and with vacation, to see lots of great food organizations out there. And I think I can, I hope to bring some of those ideas to the board as I've seen those. Thing which always amazes me, or not amazes me, because I know it's a great place, Hanover Co-op, but when I go to the Natural Food Expo out in Anaheim, or the Fancy Food Show in San Francisco or New York City, and my badge will say Hanover, New Hampshire on it, people mention the Hanover Co-op. The Hanover Co-op is known throughout the country as a best in class. This is not something that people just know around here, but people out in Portland, Oregon have heard of the Hanover Co-op in New Hampshire. And I think that's really kind of cool. So in any case, that's a little bit about me. Like I said, I love being in the food business. My background has been in sales and management. So that's kind of what I understand, is how to sell food, how to manage folks. And that's why I kind of see myself being involved in this board if I was had the privilege to be elected to the board. And I appreciate this opportunity to say a quick few words. So thank you very much.
Peter, I thought I was the only one who visited co-ops and grocery stores in other
Yeah.
states. but
Yeah.
I do do that. So
All right, well, we can maybe take a vacation sometime. We'll take everybody on a trip when we go around to food co-ops.
yeah,
I do
better
that too. It's a great hobby.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for introducing yourself. And let's see, April, I'm going to turn it over to you. So not everyone could be here today. And one of the candidates was, she recorded a video for us. And so April, take it away.
Okay, let's see here. Good morning. My name is Jen Teets. I live in Wilder, Vermont with my daughter, my dog, and my 7 chickens. Sorry I can't be with you this morning. I started my career in the U.S. Navy with 13 years of active duty, and this morning I am attending the commissioning of the USS Delaware, which is why I can't be with you. I first moved to the Upper Valley in 2013 as a Tuck student, and then I returned in 2019 after spending several years in London as a management and strategy consultant, which remains my job to date. For as long as I can remember, I've carried a passion for food and a strong belief that food has a unique and special way of uniting people and strengthening community. The first time I walked into the co-op, I felt the community, just this keen sense of passion for bringing people together, for putting healthy food on plates, and for serving the totality of the community, from the employees to the vendors to the farmers to the members. I'm really hopeful that I can take the lessons I've learned as both a military officer and as a management consultant and bring those together in a way that helps the board of directors for this really special place, which has welcomed me and my family with open arms, has allowed me to share hospitality with so many who have, joined my table, and has helped, nurture and strengthen this passion I have for both the food and the community. So thank you in advance for considering me as you cast your ballot. Again, I'm sorry I can't be here, and if there's any questions I can answer, please don't hesitate to get in touch, or maybe find me lingering around the cheese counter at the Hanover Co-op. I really look forward to working alongside you to help strengthen the co-op and find new and innovative ways to serve our farmers, our vendors, our employees, and our members. Thank you.
All right, well, there you have it. Okay, so that concludes the introduction portion, and I just want to let everyone know that this is not the only time that you'll get a chance to meet the candidates or engage. We do have April 23rd, actually. We're gonna do bagels and coffee with the candidates, so that'll be an opportunity to engage further. You can come and ask questions and just get to know, just if you just even want to know more about the co-op. So that'll be a great opportunity. And that's Saturday at 11 o'clock, April 23rd. And then also voting closes at the end of April. So just want to put that out there. Now I'll open it up to the general public to ask questions, and please feel free to engage and ask questions. Okay, so how about this? I'll kick off the first question, and then, if anyone has any from there, then you can ask. So I just wanted to know or hear from some of you, what excites you? I think I did hear from one person, and they talked about the mission of the co-op, but what excites you about the mission of the co-op? What gets you excited about it?
Well, that might have been me, CJ.
Yes,
I love the supporting of the local, the farmers, the vendors, the whole community outside of our stores. I think that that's really important. It makes me feel really good when I do visit the co-op, and and I can find local breads and cheeses and mushrooms. Oh my goodness, the mushrooms are amazing, that are local. And so for me, that part of the mission, and I know the vision and the mission is a little bit broader than that, but for me, that's the thing that gets me the most excited.
Anyone else?
I'll go, CJ. So I think honestly, the quality of the food that the co-op brings in, I feel very passionate about that. And I am very excited about their commitment to environmental sustainability. And like Melissa was talking about earlier with her research on co-ops in Spain, I think the co-op is a good model for what we need to do nationally to increase our sustainability and engage our communities to really help solve some of the large problems that are facing our nation, social injustice issues and environmental issues. And I think that the co-op is well positioned to bring some of those issues together and find comprehensive solutions. So that's, I'm excited about that.
Thank you, Marlena. Mary Lou?
Thanks, CJ. I think that thing that excites me most about the co-op is not only the excellence of the work that it does for the community as a co-op, but how that leverages to support so many different functions in our community, in our world, and ultimately in our environment. And I think that all the foundation of that being a cooperative structure at a time when our communities can often be polarized. The idea that we can come together in a sustainable model that not only feeds us and our community, but brings us together, not to be the same, not to even find consensus, but to cooperate by definition, is the thing that excites me most. And I think that our world needs desperately.
Wonderful. Peter, you're up next.
Yes, I just want to jump in. A couple of things, just the local piece is so important to me. And just that's with the other food choices that we have in the Upper Valley, we have a company, Hannaford, owned by a Dutch conglomerate, or Price Chopper, that's just got merged with another company and they've become something even larger. There's no food sources that companies that support local better than the Hanover Co-op. And we do have other co-ops in over in White River and such, and that's great too. But I think it's so important to support that local, and we got to look to make sure that we continue to support locally and support our local businesses. And then the other piece is the ownership model of a co-op, I think, is really important too, as so many companies, and you can work for a company and you're answering to shareholders, but with a co-op, and this is a business it's owned by the shoppers, and I think that's just fantastic. And I would love to see, the co-op ownership model continue to grow, throughout the U.S. We've heard a little bit about that at the beginning of the meeting earlier, but that's what really excites me.
And I just want to acknowledge, before we get to you, Eric, if you want to post a question in the chat, you can. Michaela, I see you out there, and we'll get to your question shortly. Eric?
Thanks so much. So I'm just going to make a quick comment about some of the areas that the co-op has defined as important to the members, and that it wants to show results over time. I think that balance between affordable food and healthy food is one of the strengths of this co-op, that making the co-op accessible to folks and creating ways to help folks who might not otherwise be able to afford food to get access to it, while also supporting local producers and food that is the priority was creating something that's particularly healthy or nutritious. The charitable contributions to the community with Willing Hands and the Pennies for Change beneficiaries, and then again, giving money back to the member owners based on their shopping and economically investing in the co-op, I think is very exciting. The meeting people where they are and not telling people what to do, but really having an engaged, informed, educative environment for learning about food decisions, I think is a way to be very inclusive. And the co-op serves the Dartmouth-Hitchcock community and the Hanover community and all different folks that have different needs and different perspectives. So welcoming all those views and trying to be a resource for all of them is huge. Melissa mentioned in her comments the competition with major retailers, and as a co-op, one of the strengths of this co-op has been to not only be a part of, but to help create and nurture co-op organizations for food co-ops, for grocery co-ops, nationally and regionally. So I talked a little bit about the regional group that this co-op helped to form, but nationally, one of the main reasons that National Cooperative Grocers was formed so that food co-ops around the country could compete effectively in a marketplace that was seeing Whole Foods expand very rapidly. The national group includes 148 co-ops that represent 1.3 million people and $2.4 billion of sales. So that gives a lot of buying power that enables co-ops like this one and also much smaller co-ops to be able to stay in business when a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's comes in next door. So those are just a few aspects of it, and each of those things are exciting, and it's particularly exciting now because the board is going out to the membership again to check in and say, what are your needs now and what's important to you now and what do you want to see in the future? And so it's a very exciting moment to be part of the co-op.
Thank you, Eric. All important points there. Jessica.
Thank you. So thinking about the mission of our co-op, I always come back to the 7th cooperative principle, which is concern for the community. And I really strongly feel that that's the foundation of everything our co-op does in the Upper Valley and beyond. Whether we're talking about local agriculture specifically, or access to food for community members, or the ways that we are able to look at our dollars and determine how we can reinvest those in the community through Pennies for Change and the other programs, and how we've created this structure, this web of, I think, support for everyone. So no matter what way you are involved, whether you are raising the chickens that are producing our eggs, or you are someone who's not a co-op member, but you're coming through the store to pick up something for lunch, like the way that you interact with our system allows there to be greater good in this community through supporting our efforts to reach our net zero goals, or supporting local economy dollars, and making sure everyone is fed and creating access to education and real community coming together. So for me, getting to be a part of an organization that touches so many aspects of our community so deeply in such a thoughtful and intentional and positive way is a gift. And I'm excited to see so much enthusiasm from all of the candidates who are running, because I think there's so much potential for good. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. Lindsay, take it away.
And I'll just sort of reiterate or expand on what Jessica just said. To me, it is about the food and having good quality food and supporting local farmers, and having some really high quality products that you can't find other places. But it's really, to me, more about the community and our connection to the community and what we mean to this community. I watch as there's a lot of calls for other mass, large grocery chains to come in. And I worry about, if the co-op doesn't exist, the hole that it would leave in this community. And it wouldn't just be good food, but it's our connections. The Hanover Cooperative Community Fund, I can't remember how many small nonprofits we gave little grants to this year. We talk about the Pennies for Change program. We the King Award, but there's other scholarship awards. And that's just, those are just the ones that we post where there's lots of donations. People come to the co-op all the time and we give, and we have lots of different connections. And that to me is part of the bigger part of the nourish. We're nourishing and supporting our local community. And that means a lot to me, and creating that, because that's what it's about. We saw through the pandemic, you know, again, lots of places that closed down, how, you know, big nameless stores just flourished because they could ship to you to home. And as we were scrambling to catch up, we were able to put together the curbside and really try to find a way to meet our community and meet those needs. And it's harder when you're on a smaller scale, but I just think that there would be a large hole left. And so that people don't always recognize how much we reach. And I get to see it firsthand being a part of the outreach department. And it makes me really proud. And I think that to me is one of the biggest pieces.
All right. So I want to center things a little bit. And Alan he kind of asked a great question. And it was more on the scale of 0 to 10. How deeply do you think the board members should get involved in day-to-day operations? So just tagging along off that question, from a policy level, how might you address the use of plastics in our stores? And do you feel that that's a priority? And I think I'm asking because, again, you know, we're talking about operations versus policy. So it can be kind of a tricky question and really understanding the role of the board. Does anyone want to tackle that? Mary Lou, go ahead.
I think it's incumbent upon us to recognize the professionals who are running the organization and their ability to analyze any situation, provide the appropriate data, and then support the decisions that are recommended by the staff. This is an organization that has committed itself to net zero by 2030, and that's a policy that the board can embrace. Our role, I think, is to support the staff in coming up with the strategies to execute that, and then to help communicate out to our community and our shareholders and our members to support those ideas. So I think there's a very important structural difference between the role of the board and the role of the staff, and especially important policies like plastics and sustainability issues. Thanks.
Okay, great. Peter.
As far as the board, I echo some of that, but I think it's so important that the board is there for oversight, governance, and policy, I think, as you said, Mary Lou. And a board, I've been in organizations where a board can really undermine management. We have a general manager, and it's important that the board supports Amanda as she comes into the role, and is there as the guidance and the support, but not trying to run things on a daily basis. That's not the role of a board, but it's there to oversee the organization and make sure that the management team has what they need. And as far as the plastic, I totally would love to see a policy going in that direction, because one of the things that I think has been a secondary disaster with the pandemic is just the amount of plastic that I've been consuming as I was ordering dinners from local restaurants over the last 2 years, and just this plastic that seemed to pour into my house. And if we can provide policies to help the co-op to guide it away from all that plastic use, I would be certainly a champion of that.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Yes, like the two previous candidates, the board responsible or board members get involved in daily operations is 0. That's not our role. And our role is governing policy governance and and we have one employee, which is the GM. So as far as environmental concerns, again, we can set the policies. There's a net zero one. That is part of the triple bottom line, is our responsibility to the planet. So to continue to look at that, but allow the actual implementation of that at the employee level. There's people that are working really hard on that, and it's not a simple just get rid of all plastic. As Peter just pointed out, the pandemic really reversed a lot of strides that we had made. We had just started a coffee cup program along with Lucky's Coffee Garage that we could no longer do at the moment. A lot of things reversed because now everything has to be individually wrapped, all of our bakery goods. And so until a public health crisis really throws some things into the mix. And so it's just not as simple, as well as availability of products. Composting to-go boxes cost a lot of money. If you want to talk about bottom lines, they are very expensive. And then who's going to absorb that cost and who's going to pass that on? It's just not a simple answer of we're going to get rid of all plastics. So, but there are very talented and co-op employees who work on this on the daily, and that's their job.
Thank you, Lindsay. Karen. Next.
I don't know that I can say it any better than Lindsay just did. I don't think it's the board's position to be involved in the day-to-day. Certainly not. We had talked about goals and transparency and the setting of goals and understanding what they are. So the board, along with the GM, can certainly understand what our goals are, but it's up to the GM to take that and run with it, right? So the setting of the goals is kind of the what, and leadership is kind of the how they go about it is really up to them. And that's really kind of the best way to support the business and support the general manager. As far as plastic goes, yeah, it's obvious that the pandemic really had a complete reversal effect on the use of plastic. And as we start to come out of the pandemic, some of that may organically improve, but certainly it's something that's really important to have a conversation about. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to remind everyone we're coming up on a time here, but we're going to get to the questions and the responses. Eric, if you want to go next.
Thank you. So the board has a vital role in the stakeholder community of the co-op, and there are two relationships that the board is responsible for. One is with the member owners, and to try to understand what their needs are and to make sure that's reflected in the policies of the co-op, and the other is with the general manager. And so if you look at what the co-op says today, in terms of the member owners, the board and the members are asking the co-op to create positive environmental choices for the members and help shoppers to understand the impacts of the choices that they make. And then in terms of the general manager is asked to maintain the long-term integrity of the co-op by preventing certain things from happening. And one of the things they're asked to prevent is long-term environmental damage directly relating from operations of the co-op. When you get into the details of how that's expressed right now, it focuses largely on greenhouse gas emissions, and it specifically goes on to talk about net positive emissions in 2030. So the general manager acts in relation to those needs and reports back on it, and the board listens to that and accepts the interpretation and the results that the general manager shows, but also at that time can reevaluate those policies and say, is this the policies we want? Does this reflect the members' needs? And so you can see there's some general and some specific, and a lot of the discretion goes to the general manager in terms of interpreting that, but the board does have an opportunity to retool. And again, this current process to reimagine the ends policies creates an opportunity to direct that general manager towards the most important things for the co-op to accomplish over time. And again, the member owners do have an opportunity to directly state their needs and views to the co-op and the management of the co-op. And one of the things the board can do is continue to create forums and opportunities for the voice of the members to be as clear as possible. So the members do have a range of channels to make sure that their needs and interests are heard as well.
So, all right, so Marlena and then Jessica and Paul, I don't know, I saw your hand. So if you have a question or response, you can. Okay, Marlena.
Okay, thanks, CJ. So I agree that the plastics are an issue. If I remember correctly, only about 9% of plastics are recycled, and most of those clam containers that food comes in are not recyclable, even though they have the arrows. I don't believe it's economically feasible for them to be recycled, and so they're often not. So I agree, I think it's an issue. As everybody's already stated, it's not really the board's place to control the day-to-day operations. That said, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure we are hearing about these issues and concerns from the membership and then representing them with our goals and policies that we do right. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
All right, thank you. Jessica.
Thank you. So clearly, as a policy governance board, our purview is not engaging in daily operations. It is supporting the GM and the leadership team as they make decisions about the running of the co-op. I can speak to what the board can do regarding plastics, though, and that is listen to feedback from the community, from the membership, provide opportunity for engagement with the board so we have a clear picture of what the membership envisions, and also educate ourselves. When the co-op in, I may be incorrect with the year, 2019, moved away from using plastic shopping bags in the stores, that was a result of a lot of work and member feedback. And we held an event where it was a dinner with the board, where we spoke with Mark Morgan from the Lebanon landfill and a number of other people in the community to educate both the membership and board members about what waste management in this area looks like and what is feasible, what options are available, how that's handled. And as someone who has worked on a waste reduction program for the Lebanon Farmers Market to get rid of things like styrofoam and reduce our outdoor events environmental impact, it's a multi-layered, really complicated issue, and what options are available depending on what alternative packaging actually exists at any given point in time, particularly now during the pandemic with supply chain issues. It's an exceptionally complicated issue, and it's always worth looking at as an organization, but it's not the board's place to dictate to the co-op that now is the time to do something. That's an informed decision that will happen on the operations side of the organization, but being aware of these issues is something that will create opportunities for the board to make informed policy decisions regarding our environmental impact.
All right, Paul, I see your comment. Did you want to expound, elaborate?
Yeah, thanks, CJ. I think the punchline I would add to that is no one's interested in polluting the environment, right? That should be taken at face value. Otherwise, we wouldn't care about 2030 and greenhouse gas emissions and all the like. I've tried to put into the chat some of the pragmatic aspects of running a business. These are pragmatic aspects. These are the conditions that we face. I think Lindsay summed it up very well when she said the pandemic set us back on these initiatives. They also set us back on training for employees. There are lots of things that we were set back on because of the pandemic. And things will unwind. And that's what, business is all about. And yep, the board is supposed to listen to members. Yep, the board is supposed to set overall strategy. At the end of the day, once those decisions are taken, it's up to the operational aspects, the GM, his or her team, as the case may be, to get on and implement it. And then they are measured versus performance by the executive limitations of policy governance. These types of strategic and tactical issues are best left, these decisions, inside to people who are dealing with them every day. We have really, really good people who work at the co-op. I've run some of the largest investment companies in the world, all right? And I'm telling you, the people that work at the co-op really know what they're doing. And I can't say that for all organizations. So this decision, it's not black or white, it's not binary, it's not on or off, any of that stuff. It is a process, and it is a journey. It isn't a destination. So that's all I have to add, CJ. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Paul. Appreciate it. All right. So we are out of time, folks. Michaela, if you have any more questions about this specific topic, you can definitely reach out, contact the co-op, and someone will be there to answer your questions. And then I also want to just thank April for putting the info session in the chat box. I mean, this was such a great way to engage. Let's continue it. Let's continue the conversation. So join us April 23rd. That's a Saturday at 11 o'clock. The candidates will be there. And I'll just say it again. I mean, we have some of the finest here. This is so amazing. We're so lucky that you all have decided to run this year. And we are so excited for the future of the board. Thank you to the member owners for joining us today and sticking around. We appreciate your questions. We're always here to engage. So with that, we'll sign off. Bye now. Thank you.